My name is Marion Teresa Wood Smith, a graduate of the class of 1947 from Bernard High School, high school of 21, the largest class of Bernard original. There would have been only 12, but World War II veterans came home and joined our class, which made 21. Bernard burnt in the summer of 46, so we marched at East End Drive Church of Christ.
My name is Fanny Gwen Bowles. I graduated from Bernard High School in the class of 1954, played on the first girls basketball team that Bernard had. We went a lot of places and had a lot of fun.
My name is Elsie Vaughn. I went really 13 years to Bernard School, grammar school, and high school. It was a wonderful place to be in that time. It was a segregated school, and the students all lived in just about the same neighborhood. Another thing about Bernard School, everybody knew everybody. It was something, well, not only did they know the student, but they knew the parents. So it was just one great big family. Mm-hmm. When you got a whipping, everybody knew about it. So you just didn't get many whippings, you behaved yourself. Bernard was one of the schools that seemed like a lot of love within itself, its own. I couldn't have been to a better, nicer, knowingly everybody school.
Welcome to this edition of Soul of Warren County. I'm your host, Mickey Gwynn. From those video clips, you can see how special Bernard School was to the students that attended that landmark institution in the McMinnville community. This is the second part of a two-part documentary honoring Bernard School. I hope you enjoyed the first part, where we talked about the history of the structure itself. But Bernard School was more than a building. The staff of the school is what students remember, and teachers and principals have left an indelible mark on the history of Warren County and McMinnville. Today we'll take a trip back in history and talk about the people of Bernard School. Just as Sam Leftwich was the catalyst for the old city school for Negroes, Julius Rosenwald and his foundation was a catalyst that made Bernard School a reality. Julius Rosenwald was born in 1862 to the clothier Samuel Rosenwald and his wife Augusta, a Jewish immigrant couple from Germany. He was born and raised just a few blocks from Abraham Lincoln's residence in Springfield, Illinois, during Lincoln's presidency. At age 16, Rosenwald was apprenticed by his parents to his uncles in New York City to learn the clothing trade. While in New York, he befriended Henry Goldman and Henry Morgenthau. With his younger brother, Morris, Rosenwald started a clothing and manufacturing company. Despite their best efforts to have a successful manufacturing company, the recession of 1885 brought that business to an end. Rosenwald did not give up, though. Rosenwald had heard about other clothiers who had begun manufacturing clothing according to standardized sizes from data collected during the American Civil War. He decided to try the system, but to move the manufacturing facility closer to the rural population that he anticipated would be his market. He and his brother moved to Chicago, Illinois. Once in Chicago, the Rosenwald brothers enlisted more help from a cousin, Jesus Will. Together, they founded Rosenwald and Will Clothiers. In 1893, Richard Sears and Alva C. Roebuck renamed their watch company Sears, Roebuck and Company and began to diversify. Rosenwald and Will was a principal supplier of men's clothing to Sears and Roebuck. In August 1895, Sears sold Roebuck's half of the company to Rosenwald and the Chicago businessman Aaron Nussbaum for $75,000. Soon, Nussbaum became a problem, and Sears and Roebuck bought him out for $1.3 million in 1903. The company's prosperity and vision for greater expansion led Sears and Rosenwald to take the company public in 1906 with $40 million in stock. Rosenwald would often discuss America's social situation, agreeing that the plight of African Americans was the most serious in the U.S. Booker T. Washington encouraged Rosenwald to address the poor state of African American education in the U.S., which suffered from inadequate building and books. Rosenwald established the Rosenwald Fund in 1917. The Rural School Building Program was one of the most extensive programs administered by the Rosenwald Fund. This program eventually was responsible for the construction in the South of more than 5,000 schools and shops for African American children and homes for their teachers. These schools became informally known as Rosenwald Schools. The fiercest advocate for Rosenwald schools in Tennessee was Robert E. Clay, the state developer of Negro education. Mr. Clay began his career for the state of Tennessee as a state Rosenwald agent in 1917 and was credited with building 501 Rosenwald schools in the state. As a representative of the state Department of Education, Mr. Clay held the position of State Director of Negro Education from 1937 until his retirement in 1956. His association with the state education program brought him into contact with many influential persons in the state, an opportunity which contributed to the popular demand for his services among teachers, principals, supervisors, Jeans teachers, and other individuals and groups. He was promptly identified with local, state, and national organizations, including the Interracial League of Tennessee Commission on Race Relations, National Youth Administration, the National Negro Business League of America, and the State Better Homes Movement. In 1932, Mr. Clay received a B.S. degree from Tennessee A&I State College, now Tennessee State University. It was through the efforts of Mr. Clay that Bernard School became a reality.
Professor Wood was there at first, Bernard.
Yeah.
He was there when I was there.
A long line of distinguished principals served Bernard School, including J.E. Woods, J.E. Turner, Andrew M. Gilbert, Roy Spencer, and the notable S.M. Stamps Sr. Spurgeon M. Stamps Sr. was born in Winchester, Tennessee, and reared in Sallisaw, Oklahoma. Professor Stamps attended school in Oklahoma through the 10th grade, when he left for boarding school at Roger Williams College, a historically black college in Nashville, Tennessee. He was educated through the remainder of high school and completed his post-secondary education at Roger Williams College. After graduation, he also served on the faculty for 1 year. Stamps was married in 1930 to a teacher by the name of Nina Dobbins, a native of Hartsville, Oklahoma. They met while attending Roger Williams College. In 1943, the Stamps left Oklahoma to reside in Wichita, Kansas. In 1948, the superintendent of black education in Tennessee contacted Stamps about a principalship opportunity. Soon, Stamps was appointed principal of the segregated Bernard High School in McMinnville, Tennessee. During Stamps' tenure at Bernard, a gymnasium was erected in 1953 and dedicated in January 1954. This allowed the school to have its very first basketball teams. Football had already been a part of the school's few extracurricular activities. In the summer months, students in the community swam in the local rivers, and there was a history of drownings. Concerned, Professor Stamps encouraged the school board to install a swimming pool on the school property. He also convinced the school board to keep the gymnasium open all summer to provide recreation for the black children. He remained at Bernard until school integration in 1965. He served years as an assistant principal at McMinnville City High School before retirement in 1966. Professor Spurgeon M. Stamps Sr. was a driving force behind the success of Bernard High School. His standard uniform, a suit, white shirt, and bow tie. Notable teachers at Bernard School at its inception included Mrs. Maybelle Locust, Mrs. Bessie T. Gwynn, Miss Sidna Ruth Cope Beatty, Miss Edith Bates, and Miss Edna Rhodes Eder.
Yeah, I can't remember the first grade teacher, but I know Miss Edna and Miss Gladys Spencer and Miss Cindy Beatty. Miss Cindy Beatty taught 8th grade. And Miss Edna, she taught 5th grade, which she was wonderful to me because I was poor. And she always helped me a lot, you know.
Born in McMinnville, Tennessee in 1906, Mrs. Beatty went to Bernard High School and later, at the age of 16, attended Tennessee A&I University, where she received her teaching certificate. She taught for the first time at an East Tennessee school for 1 year. Then she returned home to Warren County to teach. Her first few years teaching were at Smart Station School, then at Cummings Chapel, the one-room schoolhouse for blacks. Mrs. Beatty later joined the Bernard teaching staff. She taught 5th and 6th grades until the school closed because of school integration. She was reassigned to West Elementary School from 1968 until 1971. She could have retired in 1968, but chose to continue teaching. After leaving West Elementary, she began teaching adult students at home. Miss Sidna accomplished a feat that is hard to reckon with. She taught as a teacher in Warren County for 64 of the 65 years. Probably the most well-known teacher and most remembered was Mrs. Bessie Taylor Gwynn. Miss Bessie, as affectionately known. She was born in Athens, Alabama on February 17, 1895. She was born into poverty, only 32 years after the Emancipation Proclamation freed her ancestors. Like most other blacks of the time, Gwynn had little hope of an education or advancement beyond some form of menial labor. Her father was a tenant farmer whose yearly income barely provided the necessities to survive. Still, somehow her parents saw fit that she would attain a basic education by sending her to Trinity School, a private institution for blacks run by the American Missionary Association. While she attended a basic elementary education, the experience also whetted her appetite for more learning. She moved to Nashville in 1911 and graduated from a regular school in 1915, the high school of Fisk University. Her Warren County ties came when Professor Stamps contacted her from McMinnville regarding a teaching job at the black high school. Miss Gwynn accepted at once, realizing the need to repay her school debts, thus starting her on an imaginative career. It was challenging to inspire her students to obtain a good education. Some of the parents of those attending could neither read nor write and had never had employment requiring those skills. With little urging or inspiration from parents, students were not likely to have a great desire to get an education.
My name is Robert Gwynn. I was a Bernard High School class of 1954. I graduated, we had the largest freshman class that Bernard had ever had. We had 52 people in our class. That was the largest class that Bernard had, and we had people from all over the other counties that were there going to high school as well. The first few days, well, first of all, we traveled by bus from Viola to Morrison, then to McMinnville. That gave me a chance to study on the way because in Viola I didn't have much chance to study because without any lights in the house. We was using lamps at the time, and they didn't provide that much light. But anyway, those were glorious days. That gave me a chance to study, so I had my lesson already figured out before I got to school, because that hour bus ride gave me a chance to do that. Everybody was very skeptical about Miss Gwen because they've heard about her and everyone knew that she was a tough teacher, but she's the one that she provided more opportunity for a learning environment than any of the other teachers, as far as I'm concerned. The first days in high school, we didn't know what to do because we came from a one-room schoolhouse in Vala, but those were good days. And Miss Gwen told us what the class was going to be about, and she said she expects everybody to participate and without any exceptions. And she says, if you don't volunteer, I'm going to call on you anyway, so you might as well volunteer. So people were nervous, and I was nervous too. So I got with Dorothy Liggs, and I said, you and I should take the first class, and we'll get that over with. She said, okay. So we took the first class. It was Macbeth, and I provided the first half of the class. And the next day, Dorothy provided the other part of the class. And everybody in the class was so relieved when we were giving the class, because I knew what I was talking about, and so did Dorothy Liggs. So it worked out really good. But what was happening, everybody else was getting nervous, because everybody in the class was frightened of Miss Gwen, because they knew that she didn't play, and they knew you had to provide something to pass her class. So everybody was saying to me, Dorothy Liggs and I, you guys are going to have to provide the next class too. And I said, she ain't going to let us provide the next class. We did our class. That's over. We can't do 2 classes and everybody sat there and watched. So I said, well, you're going to have to study. That's what I say. So classes went on, and it was really, everybody was nervous because everybody was afraid. Miss Gwen was a hard grader anyway, and everybody was afraid they was going to fail the class. And this was the largest freshman class we ever had, and it'd be terrible if the class couldn't graduate. So out of the 42 people we started out with, upon graduation, I think we had 21 people. Some of them fell out, some of them left town, didn't nobody know where they went, just left. So it was a good experience for most people, because I think everybody learned something out of the class. But Miss Gwen, I learned more from her than I did any other teacher there. And I think she was the best teacher Bernard ever had. So I would say everybody did well, but they could have done better. But the pressure was too much on some of them, and some of them just gave up and went to the service or went to the Army or the Navy or wherever they could go. So that was my days at Bernard. They were good days, and I enjoyed them. And Bernard means a lot to me, because I think my education would be a lot less.
Motivation requires a unique person to instill in the students a desire to better their role in life. Bessie Gwen was just that person. Former United States Ambassador to Finland and former student Carl T. Rowan had this to say about Mrs. Gwen. Among the things that I did not have was electricity in a little frame house that my father built. It was her inspiration that inspired me to spend many hours squinting beside a kerosene lamp reading Shakespeare and Thoreau. Mrs. Gwen seemed to have complete control of any situation. This thin-framed lady talked, smiled, and walked with a sense of grace.
Hello, my name is Janetta Ford Strode. I attended Bernard School in the grades from 6 years to high school. And then we had our principal was Mr. Stamps. And I have a little story that I would like to tell you about Mrs. Gwen. She was our home economic teacher, and the day she asked us to, she gave us an assignment to do, and we were to take it home and study it, and then she would ask us about it the next day. Well, I thought that I knew all about what she was talking about, because I had my mother to, I saw her do this. The story was, she wanted us to teach, she wanted us to learn how to do gravy. And I said, oh, I can do that. without, looking off the paper. Well, I did, but when time come for us to go to class, she asked those that wanted to give their talk. And I said, I do. And I started off doing this. It's really funny. And she stopped me in the middle of it. She says, now, she had this little keen voice, and she said, now, just where did you get that? And I told her, I said, well, I know, I watched my mama. And she said, well, this is not your mother's gravy. This is the gravy that I told you to do. That was so embarrassing, and everybody, class members, laughed at me. So I said to this, I had to stay after school and do it all over again. So I went on, and the principal was S.M. Stamps at that time, and he was over some of the rest of the classes in the school too. So Mrs. I think her name was Mrs. Etter, and then the teachers, Mrs. Etter and Mrs. Sidney Beatty, and I think it was the principal's wife, Nana, I think that was her name. So I really had a good time. Things were going real good. I was doing good in school, and I had other things I did in school, and such as I was to get all this stuff done, and I did, and I really enjoyed it. So I hope you all enjoy what I have done through the years in school.
In later years, another legend plied his educational trades at Bernard High School. Charles Allen Coach Dalton, as he was commonly known, created a legacy of sports and excellence that stretched beyond Warren County. Dalton was born September 30, 1936 in Sumner County, Tennessee. After an all-star high school career, Dalton attended Mississippi Vocational College, now Mississippi Valley State University, where he was a standout athlete. He excelled in basketball and track. Dalton was named to the All-State basketball team in Mississippi during his 4 years of college, and most importantly, was an honors student. He was inducted into the Mississippi Valley State Sports Hall of Fame also. Dalton began his career in Warren County at the age of 22, when fresh out of college, he took the job of teacher-coach at Bernard High School in 1957. This was the start of a remarkable career. His accomplishments on the baseball diamond caught the eye of Major League Baseball scouts, who offered him a job with the Chicago Cubs. He turned the offer down. A little-known team of traveling basketball players then approached Coach. The Harlem Clowns offered him a lucrative contract to play with the team, but he turned that down too, to continue his education. The team would later become known as the world-famous Harlem Globetrotters. Dalton served as a coach for 39 years in the Warren County school system. During his career, he taught and coached at Bernard High School, Southside Elementary, Warren County Middle School, and Warren County High School. His coaching spanned several sports, including basketball, track, softball, and football. He also taught industrial arts and physical education. Coach Dalton did show McMinnville his baseball talents with the McMinnville Rockets semi-pro baseball team for 2 years in 1972 and 73, playing the outfield and first base. A good friend in the sports was Lester Cowell, the retired vice president of First National Bank in McMinnville. Lester remembered when Coach started playing fast-pitch softball over at the fairgrounds. He thought it would be easy to hit that kind of pitch, says Lester, compared to a regular baseball, but he found out differently. I watched him in his first game we played, and he was so frustrated because he struck out all 3 times at bat. But Charlie was a competitor, and there was no way this would get the best of him. So he started to bunt his way on base and found out he was almost unstoppable. Charlie was a left-handed batter with exceptional speed, so by the time he laid down a bunt, he was already at first base because of his long strides. From the 1950s to the 70s, kids were eagerly awaited by the swimming pool for a late model Volkswagen Beetle to turn the corner so they could enjoy the swimming pool and gym. There weren't many activities for young blacks in Warren County during these years, but Coach always opened the Bernard Pool and Leroy Ramsey Gym for the kids to have something to do. He knew his sports, but was routinely passed over for high school head coaching positions. Instead, he was always called upon to be an assistant coach or coach elementary and middle school teams. Warren County wasn't ready for a black high school head coach. Dalton had the reputation of being able to stand flat-footed under the basket and jump straight up and dunk a basketball. He could also dunk 2 basketballs at one time. This was an amazing feat during this era. In addition to his school coaching and teaching duties, Dalton officiated and directed various sports leagues around the county and was involved in youth basketball camps. In light of his devotion to athletics in Warren County, the gymnasium at Warren County High School was named in Dalton's honor. With his passing in 1998, he left behind a legacy of public service and an indelible mark on Warren County sports. He loved kids, and because of his influence over them, their lives were changed for the better. Coach Charles A. Dalton believed that respect was most important. Respect had to be earned. He was well respected in Warren County. Bernard's most distinguished alumnus was by far Carl T. Rowan. Carl Rowan was born in Ravenscroft, Tennessee, the son of Johnny, a cook and cleaner, and Thomas Rowan, who stacked lumber. He was raised in McMinnville. Rowan was determined to get a good education. He graduated from Bernard High in 1942 as class president and valedictorian. He went on to study at Tennessee State University and Washburn University. He was one of the first African Americans to be commissioned in the United States Navy. Rowan was also a member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity. He graduated from Oberlin College and was awarded a master's degree in journalism from the University of Minnesota. He began his career in journalism writing for the African American newspapers Minneapolis Spokesman and St. Paul Recorder, now the Minneapolis Spokesman Recorder. He went on to be a copywriter for the Minneapolis Tribune and later became a staff writer, reporting extensively on the civil rights movement. In 1961, Rowan was appointed Deputy Assistant Secretary of State by President John F. Kennedy. The following year, he served as a delegate to the United Nations during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Rowan became the U.S. Ambassador to Finland in 1963. In a 1964 interview with Robert Penn Warren for the book Who Speaks for the Negro, Rowan reflected on his reporting of the civil rights movement, as well as his opinions on the distinction between the North and the South, prejudices and persecution, and African Americans' political power. Also in 1964, Rowan was appointed Director of the United Nations Information Agency by President Lyndon B. Johnson. In serving as Director of the USIA, Rowan became the first African American to hold a seat on the National Security Council, the highest level African American in the United States government. From 1966 to 1998, Rowan wrote a syndicated column for the Chicago Sun-Times. And from 1967 to 1996 was a panelist on the television program Inside Washington. Rowan was a fair opponent whose arguments were persuasive and well-balanced. He always came across as the voice of reason. His name appeared on the master list of Nixon's political opponents. Rowan was a 1995 Pulitzer Prize finalist for his compositions. He is the only historical journalist to win the Sigma Delta Chi Medallion for journalistic excellence. Carl Rowan was a well-known and highly decorated journalist. His columns were published in more than 100 newspapers across the United States. In 1968, he received the Elijah Parrish Lovejoy Award and an honorary Doctor of Law degree from Colby College. In 1997, he was awarded the Spingarn Medal from the NAACP. Thurgood Marshall's only interview while serving on the United States Supreme Court was for Carl Rowan's 1988 documentary. The National Press Club gave Rowan his 1999 Fourth Estate Award for Lifetime Achievement. On January 9, 2001, United States Secretary of State Madeleine Albright dedicated the press briefing room at the State Department as the Carl T. Rowan Briefing Room. Rowan died in Washington, D.C. on September 23, 2000, age 75. His alma mater, Oberlin College, holds his papers. I hope you enjoyed this special edition of Soul of Warren County as we talked about the people of Bernard High School. Please join us next time, and until then, make this and every day a great day.